Hi, kindergartners. For our station today, we're going to be doing two things at once, but you guys are kind of used to that. We sometimes do two or three things at once, don't we? All right, we're going to be reading a book together, and you're going to be illustrating a book at the same time. So it's almost like we're going to be thinking about two different stories, but they're on the same topic or the same big idea. This one is called, the one you're going to illustrate is called The History of Thanksgiving. Remember what that word history means? Yeah, it's learning about the past, things that already happened. And then the book that I'm super excited about is called Oh, What a Thanksgiving. And I've had this book for a long time. This book actually belonged to a friend of mine who used to be a teacher, and she stopped being a teacher, probably about 20 years ago. And when she was all done being a teacher, she gave the book to me because she knows I always like to borrow it from her to read it to my class. You can see, look, it has her name in it, not my name in it. Yeah, it is a little beat up. It probably needs to be taped up, but the story inside is still really good. And I'll tell you why I like it so much in a minute. Okay, so here's how I think we can work this. I'm going to show you which part of this book I think you could be illustrating or drawing a picture for. Okay, you can color the cover. You can write your name on it while I'm reading. And see where this number 1 is? It's right down there in the corner, number 1. Oh, wait, you can't see it over there. Let me move it over here. Number 1. Excuse me, where you see the number 1, you're going to be drawing the Mayflower. Remember, that was the ship that the Pilgrims came over on. This part says the Pilgrims sailed on the Mayflower. They traveled to America to start their own community. Remember, the king was being super bossy and he wouldn't let them go to their own church? That was horrible. So they came over here to start a new life. Well, you can draw the Mayflower as I start to read. You're going to look for the number 1. And that's where you're going to draw the Mayflower. All right, I'm going to start reading you the beginning of the book. This story was written by Stephen Kroll, and the pictures for this book were done by S.D. Schindler. David was a boy with a wonderful imagination. When his teacher, Mr. Sanderson, began describing Plymouth Colony the first Thanksgiving, David thought he could imagine just what being there would be like. Do you remember what an imagination is? It's things you think about inside your head and you kind of pretend. There's David. He's sitting at school, kind of nowadays, okay? So the pictures don't look exactly like now because the book's probably about 30 years old, but it wasn't way back when the Pilgrims were. It was much later than that. All right, let's see what happens next. Oh boy. Mr. Sanderson said that in their search for religious freedom, the Pilgrims fled from England to Holland. Fled means they wanted to get away. Then, in the year 1620, they sailed all the way across the ocean to America on a ship called what are you drawing? The Mayflower. And this is what this illustrator thought the Mayflower looked like. Is it looking like your picture that you're drawing? I bet you there's some similarities. Going home on the school bus, David imagined he was arriving in Plymouth Harbor with the Pilgrims. The voyage had been hard, but how exciting it was to be there at last. And it's similar to the books we read earlier today. Okay, so let's find out what happens next. Oh, well, in the little book that you're illustrating, where the number 2 is, see the number 2 down in the corner? It tells you to draw a pilgrim house. The Pilgrims reached Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. Hey, we just read that. They began to build houses. Winter was coming, so they had to work quickly. Let's see what this book says about that. Plymouth disappeared, and the bus arrived at David's stop. I can almost just hold up this piece of the book right now. See that bus dropping off David? But watch what David's imagination does. He imagined he was getting off in front of a small cottage. I can't Mrs. Finkel quite figure that out today. Built during the first year of Plymouth Colony. It was made of wooden posts, sticks, and straw mixed with clay, and rough wooden clapboards. It had a steep thatched roof and a chimney made of clay and sticks. Is that what you're drawing by your number 2? Something that looks like that? Maybe. All right. But the cottage disappeared, and there was David's house. It was big and white. Down the steps came David's father. David, he called, come help me get the turkey for Grandma. Okay, said David. Want to see what that looks like so far? Yeah, that's David coming up to his real house. Yeah, in the present time right now. All right, and his dad needs some help. All right, let's see what number 3 says. After the hard winter, the Pilgrims met Squanto. Squanto was an Indian man who helped them learn how to plant corn, hunt, and fish. He introduced them to the Wampanoag tribe. So here you could draw a pilgrim farming right in there. All right. Let's see what happens in our book. David imagined he was off to hunt wild turkeys for the first Thanksgiving. It was a lot more fun than going to the supermarket. David steadied his musket as he entered the woods. See what David's imagining? That's what it would have been like during the time of the first Thanksgiving. But look where David really is. Don't you like this book? I think the author was creative. The car pulled into the shopping mall parking lot. Come on, said David's father. Let's hurry. They went into the supermarket. They walked down the long aisles filled with food. I bet the Pilgrims would have liked something like this, said Dad. I don't think so, said David. I think they liked doing the harvesting themselves. Now, remember that word harvesting? That meant bringing the food in. It's another way of saying farming. The harvesting is when the farmer would bring the food in. All right, let's see what else we could draw. If you find picture number 4 on the second page, or number 4 where you need a picture, it says the Pilgrims were able to grow food and hunt. Thanks to the Wampanoag, they invited them to a fall harvest celebration. Oh, that's what we like to call the first Thanksgiving. So down here, you know what you could draw? You could draw what you think the first Thanksgiving looked like. David imagined he was helping gather corn for the first Thanksgiving. The sun was shining, and everyone was happy. Many pilgrims had died during the past winter, but the survivors were well, and the harvest was bountiful. There was much to celebrate and much to be thankful for. Oh, David, said Dad, pick out a can of cranberry sauce, would you please? David went to the shelf and picked out the smooth kind, the kind that slid out in a lump the shape of the can. He handed the can to his father. Said Dad. This is fine, but Grandma likes the whole berries. Get one of those, too. The Pilgrims didn't even have cranberry sauce at the first Thanksgiving, said David. Never mind, said Dad. We're having 2 kinds. Yeah, remember we were watching that PowerPoint and we said, sometimes we imagine that the first Thanksgiving was just like our Thanksgiving. Now, they may have celebrated it differently. They may have eaten a little bit different foods. They may have worn a little bit different clothing. But the big ideas were still the same. They were thankful. All right, let's see what else happens here. When David and his father got home, Mom said, "Hey, that's a great-looking turkey." "I think so," said Dad. "It's okay," said David. "What's the matter, David?" asked Mom. "Aren't you excited about Thanksgiving?" "I guess so," said David. "But it's not going to be a real Thanksgiving, not like the Thanksgiving Pilgrims had." "But everyone's coming," said Mom. "Uncle Ned will do the card tricks, Aunt Marie's in from Omaha. And don't you want to see your baby cousin Catherine? Come on now, help me get the turkey ready. Oh, good thing they're working together. Would you like to get your next picture ready? All right, well, we just drew what you think their first Thanksgiving looked like. Let's go to number 5. The words on this page by number 5, see the number 5? Says the fall harvest feast was held with 50 pilgrims and 90 Wampanoag. They celebrated together for 3 days. They ate fish, corn, squash, berries, and oysters. Draw the food they ate. Oh, kind of like what they were just talking about in our story, the turkey and the food they were getting ready. You can draw the foods right here. But David wasn't convinced. As his mother bustled around the kitchen, he imagined her cooking in his Plymouth cottage. The fire was on stones under the chimney. They would keep the coals burning all night. Early tomorrow they would roast the turkey and turn it with fire irons. What a feast it was going to be! David's mother was wearing a cap, a white collar, and an apron over her long skirt. She had to be careful to keep her skirt out of the fire. So see how David's imagining his family to be a pilgrim family and their pilgrim clothing inside that home they built the first year, cooking over the fire. I hope your food pictures are coming along well. That night, as David was getting ready for bed, he couldn't help but think about how much more exciting the first Thanksgiving must have been. David woke early the next morning. He imagined he was in a narrow bed on a mattress filled with straw. Across the cottage was one carved chair. There was one small table and a large trunk in a corner. He could smell the smoke from the cooking fire. "David," said his mother, "breakfast is ready." David stopped imagining he was in Plymouth Colony. He pulled on his bathrobe and rushed to the den. His parents had already started eating. They were watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Maybe you watched that before. Yogi Bear and Mickey Mouse balloons floated by. "This is always so great," said Mom. "Yes," said David, happily sitting down to eggs and toast. "It's still not like the first Thanksgiving, though." And here they are. David imagined he heard the sound of marching feet. He looked out the window, and there was Captain Miles Standish, the commander of the Pilgrim Army. He looked a lot like Mr. Sanderson in David's imagination. Behind him marched 2 lines of soldiers. And around them the feast was just beginning. There were long tables piled with duck and goose and venison, with clams and cornbread and wild plums for dessert. There were wrestling matches and races being run. Chief Massasoit and 90 of his braves were arriving to celebrate the peace made with Governor Bradford during the past year. Oh, what a parade! Oh, what a Thanksgiving! This is what this illustrator thought that looked like. Yeah, can you see on this side? David's peeking out of his house from now, and it's like he's looking into the past. Did that really happen like that? No, but it sure is fun to imagine like that. The Macy's parade was over. David helped his parents clear the breakfast trays. "Okay, David," said Dad when they were done. "Time to get dressed. We're going to be going to Grandma's pretty soon." "Do I have to wear my blue sweater?" David asked. "Yes," said Mom. "It's cold out." "But I don't like that sweater. It itches. It looks terrible." "You won't have to wear it for long," said Mom. "And I think it looks terrific." David went to his room. He didn't really like that blue sweater at all. He didn't like his shirts and pants and the good shoes that weren't anywhere near as comfortable as his sneakers. He imagined, look at what he imagined when he looks in the mirror. Yeah. Here's David in real life. And then when he looks into the mirror, see what he's imagining? I'll read to you about it. He imagined he was back in Plymouth Colony, putting on a high-waisted jacket called a doublet and a white linen collar called the falling band. He put on his knee breeches and shoes. He looked fabulous. Maybe you've gotten to dress up like a pilgrim or an Indian before, and you enjoyed that dress up. When they were ready, it was time to walk 2 blocks and around a corner to Grandma's. David imagined he and his parents were walking through Plymouth Colony. On the right were newly harvested cornfields. On the left were 2 new cottages and a third that was almost finished. They stopped and said hello to 2 Indians, Samoset and Squanto. We keep hearing a lot of these names again and again, don't we? They both spoke English. Squanto had shown the Pilgrims how to plant their corn and where to fish. When David looked again, he was back on his own street corner. He saw his neighbor's house, each one with a lawn and a garage. A new house was almost complete. The 2 Indians were really Jim Holden and his teenage son, Jeff. They lived 3 houses away. When everyone was finished talking, Mom turned to David. "You know what?" she said. "We forgot the carving board. Could you please go back and get it?" Okay, so there they are, talking to their neighbors. See how he's imagining his neighbors, to be the Native Americans? They were really just his neighbors.
Hey, Mom.
Tell me Mama's taping. We'll have to talk about it in a couple minutes, okay? David ran home, but as he ran, he imagined he was in Plymouth Colony again. When he reached his door, he noticed a tall figure standing on the top of the hill behind the cottage. Do you think you know who it is? David climbed up after him. The hill he was climbing was Fort Hill, overlooking Plymouth. There, the figure at the top was Captain Miles Standish. He was standing beside one of 5 cannons. He was looking out behind on the colony. It was beautiful. Yep, that's what the illustrator imagined the colony to look like. See how the houses were built close together for protection? And look, they built a wall all the way around it. That was to help keep everybody safe. And right over here, Captain Miles Standish. The figure turned out to be Mr. Sanderson. Yeah, it was his teacher. Again, it was his imagination. And the wilderness was David's own neighborhood. "Hi," said Mr. Sanderson. David had never seen his teacher out of school before. "Hi," he said. "Why are you here?" "Being up here makes me think of the first Thanksgiving." "But the first Thanksgiving was so exciting." "Well, it probably wasn't any more exciting than ours. Times have changed, but we're thankful for the same things the Pilgrims were. Our homes, our friends, our families, our freedom. I still think it would have been fun to be in Plymouth. It would have been, but Thanksgiving today is everything a Pilgrim boy may have wished for." "Gee," said David, "I guess you're right. If a Pilgrim boy were here, I could even show him cranberry sauce." Mr. Sanderson smiled. "Happy Thanksgiving, David." "Thanks, Mr. Sanderson. Happy Thanksgiving to you, too." Wouldn't that be fun if we got to run into each other in our community? Yeah, maybe someday we will. That's happened before with Mrs. Finkel. I've had a lot of fun running into students, maybe at Kroger. We've run into each other at Dodge Park before, haven't we? Yeah, many of us have. Because we live in the same community, just like David was in the same community as his teacher. David ran down the hill. He got the carving board and ran all the way back to Grandma's. Her house looked as nice as any cottage in Plymouth Colony. Grandma hugged him and led him inside. "Happy Thanksgiving, Grandma," said David, and he meant it. "Why, happy Thanksgiving, David," said Grandma. As they reached the dining room, everyone rose to greet them. But there was one unfamiliar guest. To David, he looked exactly like the boy from Plymouth Colony. This is my neighbor Michael, said Grandma. His parents are away, and he's spending Thanksgiving with us. Everyone started talking. Everyone seemed to be getting along. Even baby cousin Catherine wasn't so bad. By the time the turkey was served, David and Michael were friends. Oh, that's kind of cool. Kind of like the Pilgrims and the Indians were becoming friends. Huh. Yep, sharing that meal together. Here comes Grandma with the turkey. Ooh, this is making me hungry. It turned out to be a great Thanksgiving, and David knew why. What Mr. Sanderson said was really true. Thanksgiving today wasn't so different from the very first one. It will always be a time for appreciating your friends, family, your home. This book says your teacher. That's kind of fun, isn't it? And we will always be thankful for being together. David couldn't imagine anything better than that. And look at David's using his imagination again. His family is mixed in with the Pilgrims, the Indians, and they're all being thankful. Just like we said, that was the big idea of Thanksgiving. You know, boys and girls, a long time ago, there was someone who thought being thankful is such a good idea that she wrote a letter to the president. That's what number 6. See the number 6 down here? Number 6 says, Sarah Hale helped make Thanksgiving a holiday by writing to the president. Thanksgiving was a day to give thanks and spend time with loved ones. So you could draw a picture of Sarah Hill right there, or you could even write a picture of a letter. Do you know that some people still write to the president and politicians today? Yeah, actually, Mrs. Finkel does a lot of writing. Well, I shouldn't say a lot, but when I can, I tell the president and the governor and the people who write the laws my ideas. Yep, just like Sarah does. And you can do that too. You can write them your ideas and say, hey, this is what I think we should do or we shouldn't do. That's another cool thing about living in America. We have the freedom to do that. Okay, and the last one, number 7, says, today people can show respect for other people on Thanksgiving by learning about their history. Learning about the history of the first people who lived in this area called America. The Native Americans. You can draw your family here at Thanksgiving. Show how your family likes to give thanks. Maybe you have some special traditions in your family. Those are things that you do that are a part of your culture or your beliefs. You could draw a picture of that. That would be fun to see. Well, boys and girls, when you have all of those illustrations done, you can cut. You could cut on these solid lines right down the middle. Oh boy, I got the yucky scissors again. And then you can cut right down the middle this way. Now you have a choice. You could keep cutting the rectangles apart and you could make it into a book. Or you know what else you could do? It would be kind of fun if you lined them up in a long strip. If you made it go the title, number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you lined up 5, and then you made it go 6, 7. You'd have a long sheet of paper that would tell the story. But maybe some of you don't have that much space around and you want this so that it'll be a book. Well, then you would just cut again down the middle. There we go. And then you would put them in number order. Start with the cover, and then you'll find page number 1, 2, 3, 4. See, I just keep piling them. 5, 6, and 7. Yep. And then you could staple them. Maybe have a grown-up give you a helping hand with that. And you'll have a book about the history of Thanksgiving that you illustrated. Well, kindergartners, you did a really good job of paying attention because that was a very long story. It was long, but I think it was a good one because the author was so creative about the way they talked about the past and the way they thought about the present, which is now, and they thought about how they were alike and different. And we can do that too. But we'll always be thankful for each other and all the many gifts that we have.